Morning. Good 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 morning. And I thought I was playing this thing live, so you're probably all just watching me going, "What is she doing?" Good morning and welcome to Mornings with Marvel, where authenticity lives and thrives to create a space of growth, healing, and joy. I am your host, Andrea Lawful Sanders, and each day we will cover the topics that are informative and engaging while learning from each other. Good morning to each and every one of you. It is Monday, December 1st, 2025. We have 30 days left until 2025 is over. I cannot believe we're here. It has been one traumatic thing after another for many, many people. And I'm asking that as we go into the holiday season, we find some time to love on the people that are important to us in our lives because truthfully, so much is going on and so many people are going through things. I'd like to be able to say all is well in this, right now, but I can't. I absolutely cannot. I have a friend who was heading to the hospital in end stages renal failure. And as I listened to him slowly lose his functions and he's getting weaker and weaker. He shared a story of the woman who was the head kidney doctor who, because she did not like him, she was holding his stuff up and he kept saying, "You're saying this, but I'm seeing that." He was advocating for himself. He actually had a kidney match a year ago that they just informed him of 2 weeks ago. At this point, he is so weak, they're not sure if he can even get the match at all. And so without going into too many details, because I'm not sure what's going to come of this, I just want to say this to you. And I say it all the time, in a world where you can be anything, be kind, right? When people are struggling and going through things and are trying to figure out their very lives are on the line, the last thing you should feel is miffed if they are upset that they can't get the thing that they so desperately need to stay alive. We have to get outside of ourselves and stop being so, oh my God, I can't believe. They're saying X, Y, and Z, X, Y, and Z. So there's two things I want to read for you this morning. Oh God, so much in my morning motivation. Good morning to all of you. I'll check your messages and thank you for giving me the break. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. It was really, really nice. We'll talk about that another day. So I have a confession to make. I used to get super frustrated when folks worried what others might say or do, so they did not speak up when they saw an action that would adversely affect a whole group of people. And then I remembered that I can only control myself and moved accordingly. Some of us are just not cut out to be revolutionary material, and I get that. But some of you, tell me this, is it that important to be liked and seen as a team player, even as the mess you sit in is blazingly wrong? Is it more important to allow one individual the kind of unchecked power that destroys others while you sit on your hands out of wanting things to always appear shiny and good? When are we going to learn that you cannot keep the lid on a boiling pot forever? Decency and kindness, coupled with hard work, shows up beautifully when you run into the snags of life. Operating consistently as a raging bully shows up like a nightmare when the snags of life come because you have nothing in the empathy jar awaiting you, no matter how nicely you try to dress it up in the end. And still, like dust, we rise. The second one is uh, experiencing anger is a healthy emotion. Allowing it to consume your every action for long periods as a way to justify your hurt is not only unhealthy, it repels clear thinking and devours common sense to the detriment of the carrier, as it has now become a toxic element in your mind and body. The simplest solution: forgiveness, as it is a healing salve. Bitterness looks attractive on no one. Jealousy isn't cute either. As I sat as a part of a brain trust in the last few days and saw how our collective minds set in motion something that will be spoken of for decades to come, and it transpired because egos were checked at the door for a common mission, I must again say this: collaboration with the right people leads to wonderful results. It is okay to be around people who are smarter and challenges you out of your comfort zone. That is where growth happens if you let it. Don't always get caught being the smartest in the room. There's always someone smarter that you can learn from. This past weekend, good morning again to each and every one of you. This past weekend has been an interesting one, to say the least. Just watching people, how they react, how they behave. I made Thanksgiving dinner, cooked some of it, had some of it catered, took it all to my son's house. And, he didn't even want to do his own Thanksgiving. He's like, Mom, you're here. You just go ahead. He said, this is the first Thanksgiving in years. He's the first one he's ever hosted in his house, A. And the first time he's ever just not had to do anything other than to be himself. He carved the turkey as he should have, because he's the head of his house. And then he went about with his friends, and they were in the basement doing whatever they were doing. And so I was watching, sitting there watching, the different folks in the room. And there was this one young man just sitting over in the corner. He was watching them, one of my son's friends. He was watching them, but he wasn't actively engaging. And he kind of looked melancholy. So I called him over, and he came and sat beside me, and I hugged him, put my arms around him, and I said, "How you doing, honey?" And he said, "I'm all right." And I said, "Say more." And, he began talking, and he began sharing the hellified year that he has had. And I turned and I looked at him and I said, damn, right? We just don't know because people are not sharing. People are not sharing because they're not sure how to navigate. And I listened, and he talked, and I listened some more, and he talked. And I asked if he would like some feedback, and he said yes, and I gave it to him. And he looked at me with tears in his eyes, and he says, I have a mom. I love my mom. My mom's everything to me. I'm an only child. He said, but you've been such a mom to all of us, right? Like, if we feel like we can come and talk to you about the things that are going on. And I feel like while I was talking to your son and my other friends and your son's wife, that I really needed another adult your age to have the conversation with. Be open, y'all. Be open to having dialogue with our young people. He's 30 years old, but he was feeling some things. He was going through, just. And when he began sharing, and he said to me, he looked at me and he said, "You always said that when we let some things go, other things pop up." He said, "The minute I let this one scenario go, I got a managerial position. I went back to school. I'm back in school. And, he said my life just started to get better. And sometimes we think we just got to hold on to something like a goat, and that, if we just keep holding, it's going to be okay. Sometimes, many times, our blessings come when we see what things for what it is and let them go. Let them go. Something on my teeth. You got something on my teeth? Lord have mercy. Yep. I had lipstick on my teeth. And so you just, figure out the way to navigate. And it's hard. Trust me when I tell you, December is here. I woke up this morning and looked at my husband, and I was like, dang, so many people are going through so many things. And if you understand how I'm constantly hearing so much of this stuff, it's hard to digest it and still feel normal. Plus, I'm dealing with my own stuff, right? Very, very difficult for us to navigate through this time. But I'm asking you to choose kindness, choose grace, choose mercy as you see people dealing and navigating with their own thing. I'm waiting for David to join me, which I'm sure he'll be on shortly. Because, yes, it's Monday, and it's David Alexander Jenkins. Okay. Um, and it's David Alexander Jenkins, and there he is. He popped right up as soon as I was texting him.
Good morning.
Good morning, my darling.
How are you?
That hair, though, that hair.
Thank you.
How was your
Baby,
Thanksgiving? Let's start
it
there.
was it was really beautiful. It was
Yeah.
really beautiful. We had the hunt in the morning, the Radnor hunt for the fox hunt, and then we had the
Where were you
honey.
doing this in America?
Yeah. So in on the main line, there's the Radnor Hunt, and in Malvern, every year there's the Blessing of the Hounds, and so that's a Thanksgiving tradition for the morning time, and then we all retreat to our spaces and come back together for dinner around 4. So I hosted dinner at my home.
Oh.
And that was wonderful. It was really lovely to have that, and we had a feast of many courses. And then the next night is the presentation of the Philadelphia debutantes at the charity ball. So so everyone came back together again for that. So it was a litany of saints, if you will. Yesterday, I was able to relax finally, and one of my favorite things to do after Thanksgiving is to make turkey frame soup and a bone
Ah,
broth. And so I just tore that up yesterday and stayed my butt in the bed. So here we are. How was your Thanksgiving?
really good. Had it at my son's home. We children, babies running everywhere, right? So it's
That's right.
kind of hard to do fox hunts and all the things that you were doing. So we were literally we moved the sofas
Yes.
and we had like pillows on the floor, and that's where I was. I was laying
Oh,
on the floor. My oldest son came and laid on my chest, and he says, "Mom." And he just laid there till somebody was like, I need a knife to cut the ham. So, and they couldn't find it. And the guy, he said, you just left me hanging there. He came and laid with me. Then the second son came and laid with me. Then the third adopted, and they just all came. And then my granddaughter looked up and said, what's going on over here? Why is everybody just hanging out? So it was nice. It was peaceful. Um, we hosted when I asked people what they were thankful for. At least three people said that if they were not invited there, there would not have been no place to go for Thanksgiving, which kind of, brought tears. And then my son said something that was so dastardly. Guess what he said, David? Can you do this again for Christmas?
oh yes. Oh yeah.
And I said, hell to the no, to the no, no,
You can
no.
do it. We can make it happen.
Oh, child, no, 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 no. That's a lot of work. But it was good to see him so restful and peaceful, and I was able to then go to my sister's house a few hours away, and I slept the whole weekend. I
Yeah.
slept and ate, just taking care of myself because December is a really busy month.
Yeah.
Um, Let me ask you this because I'm wondering if it's just me, if I'm in a heightened sense of oh my God. Do you feel the sadness that everyone else is feeling, the level of desperation while we're doing all the things to be normal? Do you
I
feel what I am feeling, or is it just me?
I feel sadly, I don't think it's desperation quite yet. And I say sadly because I think that a sense of urgency is always important as a fire under our butts. I feel a question mark in the air, an unsatisfied reality, a wandering truth, if you will, about what does this all mean. I think people are realizing as the federal government chooses not to release job reports and not to release information about the federal government's reserves and how much money we do or do not have and what our economy actually looks like. I fear that Americans who are feeling the pinch, of which there are many, are in a place now that that they may not believe that they will be in good standing. They may recognize that things are not on the up and up, and they don't know really what to do about that. So, desperation comes at another phase. It's a phase that I dread because desperation causes desperate behavior. But where I see us now is in um, lack of confidence in who we are and in what that means for everything. So today I cannot. Today I am thinking about that report that's supposed to hit the desks, um, and I'm quite sure whatever comes out will not be what was promised. I see us pushing towards war as a solution um,
Yes.
very quickly. I see this escalation with Venezuela being really quite
What
worrisome.
what is that? I can't decide if we're in another distraction versus something that's really happening. There is a
Chess move. It's a chess move, right? In order to stay in the office, you want to be at war. And the best way to be able to do the things you need to do, martial law, declarations of X, Y, and Z, presidential powers, the increased powers of the president, you need to be in a conflict. And since the stoking of conflict on the streets of America has not really worked, right?
Yielded, right.
Americans have come out together and banded together in protest and taken to the streets and said, we're not going to take ICE. You're not taking our citizens away, and we're also not going to shoot you. Right.
Mhm.
So this infighting that was supposed to happen, this great war on the streets, just hasn't really happened in the way that it would have otherwise been planned. People are using social media to record what's going on and to post it in real time, ask people their names, reveal their faces, this and the other. It's just not working out really well. That said, what we are seeing now is turn. Right now, we need to have something else.
Yeah. The Jesus. I was talking to my brother-in-law this weekend, and we found it interesting that these two National Guardsmen were shot right around the Thanksgiving holiday.
Hmm.
We're in a sad place in America when nobody believes that this was accidental, right? That it was done purposefully. And I'm listening to people all around me saying they did not believe this was accidental. They believe this was set up. So, because it feels to many in America that the taking of lives on purpose to prove a point has become the thing to do, has always been the thing to do, but we've not really known so much about it, right? A lot of it has been very secretive.
It
Now
used
it's
to
just so
be
open and open.
it used to be unfathomable, almost out of come by, to begin to believe that one's own government would behave in such a heinous way. I think that trust with the American public has been permanently broken. I don't think that now the American public believes that their government is so wonderful, and I think that the American people nationalism has not done what I think people thought it was going to do. I think some people thought if you become super nationalist and alt-right nationalist in this way, that suddenly you'll garner the major support of the country and everyone will be standing behind the flag. I think what we've seen is that the country has gone too far to come back to such an alt-right nationalism without
Mhm.
a great rejection of it. And what we're actually witnessing is people coming together to heal, and to exclaim, as we remove museums that would speak to American history in a more honest way, people have decided to take to their social media accounts and blurt out their history anyway. So um, I think what we're seeing when it comes to how Americans are responding to the government and saying, we don't trust you. We believe that you will shoot yourself if it's going to make it look like there's something else going on, is the truth of where we are. And I actually think that it's a good thing that we have a healthy distrust for the things that are going on currently. As we've been proven many times recently, that Trump lore is Trump lore, and that it's not marble, it's painted, and that it's not gilded, it's been sprayed. And
How
yeah,
how does one though navigate this emotionally? People are seeing their jobs disappear.
right
Tiffany
here in the
said,
city of Philadelphia.
"Yeah, hold on." Tiffany says the loss of my mom. Her son. She said, "Good morning, Velvet." Tiffany says my son is struggling and stressed, and I asked her to say more. She said the loss of my mom. Financially, he's paycheck to paycheck, and he's worried he's disappointing me. I'm helping him financially. So let me share something with you, Tiffany. A lot of us are helping our children financially, even when they're making six figures. Six figures right now is like $50,000 a year with the way things are happening, and so we wonder if, as we're helping our children, if how are we going to fully help ourselves, right? We're talking, most of us don't have the kind of blue-blooded wealth where we are 7 and 8 generations in. Most of us are just
And
the second or the
even
third
there,
even
even
really.
there, even there, my mother says to me, "Do you need help with your groceries for Thanksgiving?" Right? That's my mom all the time, right? And you say, "Mom, thank you very much," or "Mom, no," or "Please pick up the wine." Right? I mean, it's everywhere. So I want no one to feel isolated from this truth. Everyone is in this place. I think there's also something really beautiful about. Um, I'm going to say Black people. I'm sure there'll be backlash about this, but Black people who choose to live in family units,
Yeah,
historically, who
yeah,
don't sort of push their kids into the wilderness and say, off with your
yes,
heads, right? Where
yes.
there's this
Mhm.
other culture idea that believes in such independence all the time. I think it's quite healthy to have
Mhm.
multi-generational family dwellings, and
Yes.
particularly in times like now where it's really important. We all bring something to that table. So no,
Yes.
don't feel like it's just people
Yeah.
who are living paycheck to paycheck. That's true too. It's everybody. My mother is still going. What can I help you with?
Yeah. It's difficult, and our children are young enough where they're like, I'm trying to navigate, I'm trying to figure out, but they have just enough money in the bank to pay their bills, and if any emergency happens, they're like, oh, what am I supposed to do about this? How am I going to be able to? And there used to be a space where they had just enough to do, or a lot of children are living, on their credit cards, and it's hard for them to go back to their parents. But what I've done is open up the dialogue with my sons and say, talk to me. My youngest son is doing pretty well. They're both okay, but the youngest son says, while I can afford to move into my own space because he shares an apartment now where he lives, everything is expensive. He said, I fear moving because I'm in a rent controlled apartment now with a roommate. Um, that I'm afraid that if I move and I move on my own and then my job is taken away, that I won't have that rent. You see what I mean? Like they are still. So he says, so he said, all I'm doing right now is putting everything in the bank. Just letting it sit in the bank until I can figure out that I feel safe enough or that I have and he knows he has a safety net, with us underneath him. But he said, I don't want to have to depend. He's lost his job in 2020 and it took him 19 months to get a decent job again. And life is getting better, but he's watching all around him how things are shifting and changing. He has a friend who is 28 years old that's making $300,000 a year, but he's making $300,000 a year because his father is president of a major credit card company. So they pushed him, and you can't be mad because people have been doing it over and again. Young black man, right? But he said, Mom, the dichotomy, the difference between this one versus that one, and that you can't really get what you want or need unless you know somebody.
There's no middle ground. What has been taken
No
away is
middle
the middle
ground.
ground. You are either going to be very successful or not, and you have to fight for it. I mean, now it used to be that you knew a promotion was coming or you're expecting a raise, and it just came along as a scheduled thing. And now, if you don't go in and remind somebody that you are who you are and it's valued at such a place, it's gone. We're
Yeah.
also seeing people being stripped of so we watch people being stripped of jobs. We watch initiatives that were meant to help people get jobs be stripped away. And I feel like part of it is that we don't have the mechanism for conversation that we're supposed to have, i.e., we need to say, such a system isn't working for the following reasons.
Yeah.
We recognize that this group of people needs the most amount of help. We are trying to figure
Mhm.
out a way to give that people the help.
Mhm.
That's a conversation needs to happen before actions are made. And
Mhm.
we are a culture, a governance, a people who respond reactively.
Mhm.
We don't proactively, preemptively put out truth so that people can prepare. That has caused a lifeboat safety drill to be a
Yes.
daily way of living. And so I think that part of the issue that we're experiencing and that Tiffany's experiencing is that we don't know that the emergency is here until the emergency is here.
Yes. Yes. But
And
you feel,
we
but you feel the question in the air. You feel
always a
the
question.
discontent in the air. You feel people are smiling, but the smiles are not reaching their eyes because what they're not telling you is, I've not had a job in 9 months, that my
Right.
six-figure salary is gone. They're showing up in all these places and these events, smiling and taking these beautiful pictures. But behind the scenes, it's a virtual nightmare for
Nightmare.
so many people.
And the crash is going to come just after the new year, right? I mean, that's when we see the physical hit always is at the end of January and the beginning of February, the truth of what people are going through in the dead of the winter. And so we have this political high that comes up until November when people are trying to get elected again, and we don't want to tell the truth. And then we have this crash in December, but it's the holiday time, so we're still cheery and we're going to get through Christmas and we don't want to give people bad news. And then, boom, Happy New Year, you have no job. Um, so I think that what we're looking at is the end of January reckoning. And what it looks like the Trump administration is doing is moving to be at war quickly so that that can be the thing that starts the fire. You have to remember for the Republican governments across history, the answer to bad management of money has always been war. Right? We can count the wars we've been in and count which administrations started those wars. And we can count what our economic situation was like when those wars were started. So we create a problem that doesn't exist, 9/11. We then blame it on people who didn't do it. And then we go and blow them up. And we make money off of the contracts, off of the war, off of the things that we're doing. And we rebuild and we have this thing. We have the Cold War, similar situation, which we get into somebody else's business and begin to help with American funds. But again, that gets manufacturing going. We have, police acts like Vietnam, where the people finally screamed and said, you have to stop. But look at how much money was made for the United States government during Vietnam. This was no accident, right? The reason why we pushed for that, like we go into places like Muammar Gaddafi's.
But David, but so many lives are lost in the process. And if those people who went and fought on our behalf, for whatever the reason, felt that they were loved and appreciated by their country,
But
have you
they're not.
listened to some of the veterans and what they've
They're
had to
not.
go through?
They're not loved and appreciated. They're used as numbers and sent into needless wars, right? These are not wars that are necessary. This isn't an imminent threat against the United States of America. This is a choice to send our boys, young women, our men out into the world to fight our bully matches. So I think quite frankly, there isn't a respect for the armed forces. There certainly isn't a great respect for the armed forces in the command of its current commander in chief, who has made horrific statements about how he feels about men and women in the armed forces. So all of that, all of that aside, um, what we see, what we're looking at, what we know is that we exist in a place where there's a question mark on
Yeah.
every day of our lives. What will happen today? We don't know. And the value of shock, the value of things that would have at one time caused us to say, can you believe this is happening? We have to do something now. It's
Now
gone.
it's every day. Now it's
We're
every other
every
minute,
day. We're immune
every day.
to the bullet.
Laura says, David, what can we as the people do if martial law is declared? I don't believe that the people want this and will rebel.
So, in order to effectively declare martial law across the country, and this is a conversation that Andrea and I we've had before, and Andrea was saying, "But what do you mean?" And the answer is, you have to be willing to be shot, basically. When the government does anything which you find to be despotic, um, the answer is for citizens to come together and take to the streets and say no. That is the answer. That is the history of America. That is the way this country has been run since the birth of America. Um, you know, uh, Stunningly, we don't know our history in many ways. Boston Tea Party, we think of it as this, and it was really about a levying of our own supplies into the water, about a taxation, and not really because we didn't have representation, but rather because landowners were losing their money to the East India Trade Company, right? That action to go out and burn our own things down, to put it all on the street, and to say no, created a response. We have never stopped behaving that way. So the American response to government, which is despotic in any way, is to take up its arms and go into the streets and say no. That means there's violence. Martial law comes. How do you, well, enough people get hurt in a situation like that, that the revolt is big enough that the government says no. The amount of citizens to the amount of members of the United States Army is a great disparaging. And so, can you control a people who are all up in arms? And I think really it's about what happens to the base of the political party in power. So, if the political party right now, being Republican, has a base which then turns on it, then suddenly you see a change in how it does regime because it realizes that it needs that base to continue forward.
But
Um,
no, isn't can we say though that that is already happening?
It's beginning to happen. What today is consequential, right? The Epstein files are to be released. The base has demanded that. It was not the cries of people who were liberal and on the alt left who beat their breast and made this happen. It wasn't the cries of people who were raped or the people who were victims of such people like Jeffrey Epstein. What happened was that the base of the Republican Party and alt right Christian nationalism got angry and said, you promised us this, and it didn't happen. And they pressured the people in the government and their constituents to move. And so they played this game of shutdown, government shutdown, and this game of how many votes do we need, and this game of releasing files. And they're still playing this chess game. Who knows what will be released today, if it will be things that, luckily, mercifully, we've received text messages and other things from the Jeffrey Epstein estate that are going to need to be checked and balanced by
And
the
who has
file.
been releasing these emails?
Good question. Members of the Congress, they say, are releasing emails from the Epstein estate, which they have the ability to do. What they're releasing, however, is stuff that if it was in this text message and in the estate and in the file and released, And we don't find that also in the documents that are released today, or designed to be released today, then we have a discrepancy and a problem. It says you redacted. It says you chose to keep things back. The legal way out is to say that there's an active investigation, and therefore it is unreasonable and unprecedented that we would release information about active investigations and people within them. The Senate's bill that was approved, that went through the House first, says very clearly that all documents are to be released. Um, we'll see. We'll see what happens. I have zero. Here we are in a place where I have zero faith in the result.
Listen to
Um,
this. I just, and so while we're focusing on the Epstein files, Israeli attacks in Gaza have killed more than 70,000 people in over 2 years of war, according to the Palestinian. 70,000, right? Israel offensive in Gaza has killed at least 70,100 people since Hamas attacked Israel on October 7, 2023, which equates to more than 3% of the 2.3 million people living in the enclave. A further 170,983 people have been wounded. The World Health Organization has said the numbers given by health officials in Gaza are reputable. Here's the other thing: this ceasefire war ended. They just
Never
moved
happened.
on as if all went. They're
Never
still shoot.
happened.
It never happened.
They never signed it, Andrea. Neither Israel, right? I mean, this is the thing. Donald Trump declared that there was this great agreement that was signed. The document was never signed, not by any party. No party signed that document. It didn't
And yet
happen.
we have moved on as if all is well. People are still dying there. There are warships enclosing Venezuela, a country that is operated on its own, and they're talking about closing off. The president is saying he's closing off the airspace. The current president of
Airspace and
Venezuela
this, that,
said
and
you
the
can't
other.
do that. You can't, as a president of the United States, close off the airspace in
Airspace in
Venezuela.
Venezuela.
Like there's so much going on, right? And the starvation of people by taking away their jobs has led to us not paying attention to the thing right in front of us, right? Because when
That
you're
is
focused on how am I going to pay my rent, how am I going to pay my bills, how am I going to XYZ, the last thing you're concerned about is this thing that seems to be far in the horizon, right? Until the thing is in front of your face going, oh,
particularly when you've been told and believe your entire life that you're sitting on an unsinkable ship.
the hell.
So that is the state of our union. that is where we are. Resistance is the answer. Resistance is the answer, and whatever that means, resistance is the answer. It means that we have to all come together and go outside together. That means we have to find our buddies who are alt-right Christian nationalists and go outside with them to explain to them they too are hurt and need this to stop. So one of the things which alt-right Christian nationalists are very angry about is the involvement the American government has in the funding of Israel, right? We have to be very clear that anti-Semitism has no place on the table, right? There is at no point where we should be angry at a particular religion, not Israel, not Jews, not Muslims, not Christians, not Hindus, not people who don't have a religion. We should never do that. But we can be very clear about our anger and our lack of defense for the government of Israel. And I think this funding of constant funds into Israel as a protectionist method is one of the things that we can protest quite loud as a country. That is an issue that the entire country has been protesting, which has seen a lot of global shifting, if you will, because this is one of the epicenters of what is wrong with the politics of America is the amount of purchasing that's been done by the Israeli government of American politicians, of American businesses, of American entities, and American life. Just looking at who owns the banks, who owns social media. And one of the things which has come up is the fact that Israel has purchased rights to TikTok's American viewers so that it can direct what information is given out. It's purchased the rights, I'm sorry, to more recently to ChatGPT. So ChatGPT will now be run in America by people who want you to hear a very specific version of truth. So when we look at that, these are the issues that we can ride behind as and its entire populace, if you will, to speak to things. And then we have to demand from our local governments all the way up that they hold the line. And we can keep them accountable by saying, if you don't hold the line, we will remove you too. We can impeach people at the local level, right? We don't have to wait for it to be the president of the United States. We can move politics at a very small level all the way up through. So if your politicians aren't doing the job they signed to do, which is to work for you, then we have the obligation and the duty to remove them and replace them with people who do. So I think that when it comes to how do we respond, what can we do? The answer is we can get out there as a force together, as a resistance, and say, this is not the
Mm,
America that I just sing to.
mm.
This is not the Constitution that I was raised to defend. This is not the place of my forefathers. And so I am interested in its return. And that means I am willing to stand up.
This is, and so, and then what's happening in Ukraine, right?
That's right.
And then they're talking about taking away green cards from issued to people from 19 countries. Like he's,
This is a man who's married to an immigrant who came on a special visa with no special talent that we can identify, who happened to meet this woman that he is now married to through Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, this is one of those verified facts now. So I, I I find it intriguing that the vice president of the United States is married to an Indian woman with brown children, and that his behavior is so. When we talk about hypocritical behavior and just vitriol and hatred for things that are nonsensical, I think they've lost the base on this one. I think the base believed that their issues, their poverty, because you have to remember that comes from a real fear that this issue, and this was stemming really from racist truths. They thought, right, that like
yeah,
they are lacking jobs because of these other people. They do suffer because there are other gifts given to whatever. It's unfair for brown people to get a leg up. Like this is the story they were told. Unfortunately, now what's happened, or fortunately for us, and unfortunately for them, is that even with all of these things having been removed, they're suffering more. Greater and greater is the suffrage of these people. And so now they're saying, well, that can't be it. What is the real problem? And they're not
mm,
willing to stop this time. This is a help because when you have a disgruntled base on that end, then they upset the system. So this leaning again, well, we're going to do more of it. I think they've lost the message. I think now the alt-right Christian nationalist is not as worried about immigrants as they are about the fact they can't get food.
right,
And the
right,
fact the farmers are angry and pissed that, they don't have the ability to be able to farm the way they used to, and that nobody
yeah,
wants their products and they can't get things. I mean, this is all of an issue. We can't even get a jobs report or a numbers report because it's so bad,
yeah.
right? The head of the FDIC told us how bad it was. And then no one released the reports. So thus ends the titles.
This is
You laugh because you can't cry. I mean, that's,
okay.
out of tears.
It's too
What I
much.
will say is that um, every country that becomes great must go through this period in which adolescence does puberty and becomes an adult. And we were a little baby country who's just getting
Mhm,
ready to hit 250 years, and that is nothing in the time
mhm.
of governance of a country. It is quite amazing for our form of government. I mean, our system of government as a republic. Um, that doesn't exist in this form in this many years. I think we are the oldest um, system of government that we have.
David, I'm listening to you and I'm reading the news as I'm listening to you. So if you see my head down, it's because I'm
Yeah,
reading certain things. But look at this. Despite wider economic uncertainty hovering above this year's holiday season, shoppers turned out in big numbers for Black Friday, spending
of
billions
course.
of dollars both in stores and online. Huh? U.S.
That's called
consumers
therapy,
spent therapy. I spent a
retail
record
therapy.
$11.8 billion online on Friday. For real, though? Making a
Retail therapy.
9.1% jump from last year. Traffic particularly piled up between the hours of 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. when 12.5 million passed through online shopping carts every minute. What the hell? If we're losing our jobs and all these things are happening,
Well, the response to poverty is always excess. So that's just an old adage, right? So who do you see lined outside the Sneaker Villa store when the sneakers are $1,000? Right? It's not people whose rent is, it's people who can't afford the sneakers who are wearing the sneakers. There's nobody who can afford $2,000 sneakers who's really buying them. They find them grotesque, right? So I mean, it's very odd, right? Unless you are a performer, artist in some way, some of the things which are right. Even when we look at who's carrying, a Birkin, why is it necessary for this? It's often not. Um, It's not, I think outside Jennifer Lopez and her Himalayans, they're being bought by people who probably can't afford to have them. In reality, the luxury has been sold to people as an aspirational dream instead of as an excess for the way you live your life. So luxury has shifted from an artistry of beauty and one-offs. It used to be about how beautiful is this candlestick, it's the only one in the world. Now it's about how can we mass produce this thing so that you can tell other people when you walk outside how important you are. And most people who want to tell other people how important they are when they walk outside, it's because somewhere inside they're not so important.
It's when I say I didn't spend a dime, I didn't spend a dime. I
I
look
didn't
around at
shop.
all the things we currently own, and I was like, no way. My husband keeps saying, "What do you want for Christmas?" I said, "Not give me a card, please."
A two
When
front teeth.
when you spend just because you can spend, that makes no sense. That
Well,
makes
it
no
it, it
sense.
does. It practically no, but from a psychological standpoint, it's exactly what people do, right? Is they spend when they are nervous. It's a terrible habit of consumerism that we built in capitalism. It's
Mhm,
one of the things that
mhm,
says you can tell yourself that you're okay if you can afford
mhm,
today to buy. And
mhm,
so the answer is, what can I consume? And we've become a consumer culture over 150 years of our
mhm,
American experiment. So it is of no great surprise to me that in times of economic uncertainty, what Americans have done is gone to the mall.
mhm, mhm.
The question will be, how many people are returning things next week? Because
Or
there's the
what
great
to
return.
do. Right, right. You feel it gives you a momentary high. I get that, right? I get that. But then after that, what do we do?
Cry.
Laverne says we will sacrifice bills this time of year and shop. Not me.
People do.
Uh,
I think, I mean, and Vern is right. The amount of people who would not pay their rent in order to make sure they had the latest X, Y, and Z.
yeah. And then she says we went to Havana last night. It was pretty much empty. 5 tables were used. Oh my God.
Restaurants are feeling it. Restaurants are absolutely feeling it. You talk to restaurateurs, and they are saying we don't, because it's one of our greatest expenses. When you're in Europe, you can afford to eat out every night. It's a lot cheaper.
Yes.
Food is better. It's cleaner. It's smaller portions. It's the
Mm,
other. Here, the expense to eat out is astronomical. I mean,
mm,
between what you pay to rest at night and to eat food of any
mm,
substance, it's a great expense. So, I what I see coming is desperation. It's not here yet, but
yeah.
it's coming, and I think it's a really ugly place because when people are desperate, they behave in a desperate way.
Mm, yeah. Yeah. Laura says, I did not shop and have notified friends that I'm not spending this Christmas. I need a car. Go ahead, honey. Go ahead.
Hmm.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Right.
And listen, if it's not necessary, I'm not doing. I can't. We cannot. We have to live. When January 2026 comes and you can't pay the exorbitant credit card bill that you racked up because you're trying to make people happy, then what do? That's just unconscionable to me. I can't do it. I don't want to do it. I'm not doing it. Right. So what are other people doing? Just like you said, if you have an American Express Platinum card and that's what you're flashing to pay your bills, use your debit card to pay your bills first, right? Because that's where you have the money. But if
I
you're
was
if you
not
if you're putting this
allowed.
stuff on credit, yes,
And the story of my famous bag that I got with my father's credit card was really the last day I had access to a credit card. Amen. And so, what a lesson did I learn? But it was a really healthy lesson for me now because I am
mm,
not dependent upon credit in any way, shape, or form because
right,
I see it
yeah,
as a.
yeah,
So in that way, I think what was done with my father, I mean, it's certainly not the lesson he was trying to teach me at the time. He was very upset about that purchase. But I think all of us need to come to a place where if we don't have it, we can't spend it. And I think we've been trained to spend what we don't
we
have or
don't
make
have,
or
but yeah,
don't
spend
have
on
it.
what we already know that we don't have. I am
We
just
don't have
not
it.
willing to go there. I'm not willing to go there. It's too much. And I tell everybody this year, only what's absolutely necessary are we doing because I have to pay the bill for whatever it is that you think you want in the moment. I'm not doing it. I can't. I cannot. Like everyone else, we are tightening our belts, trying to figure out how we can do this thing called life. It is now 2026, and as more people lose their jobs, less opportunities are available for other people. So we have to really do better. Laverne says, yes, it is. I
Absolutely.
wanted to cook for my son's birthday. He wanted to eat out because we had, wait, what? Because we just had Thanksgiving. Spent $400 for 5 people. $400 cooking at home would have fed 20 people. Yeah, I'm not doing it. Yes, Tiffany. Listen, electric going up as of today. My whole house is electric. I pay a set amount all year, so I have a credit balance as the winter hit. Now, that's the other thing. Our the electric bills have doubled, the water bills have doubled, and David,
Let me tell you how this works. When
right?
enough of America cannot afford to pay their bills, and they do not, the bills will drop. I mean, the millennials taught us something about student loans that was very
Mhm.
interesting. There was this illuminating student loan debt over top of all millennial people. And
Mhm.
when they got to a place where they all decided they were collectively not paying it, the debt went
Mhm.
away. Why? Because the
Mhm.
government realized it could not float that debt without passing it.
Right.
I think in depressions, historically, right, which is what we're talking about, we walk into a depression,
Mhm.
what happens is that people collectively say, we can't afford it.
Yeah.
And then they stop. So I don't see a big difference in that happening. I think we're going to
Mhm.
be in a place where, which is why I say it's really important for our local governments, our people to begin to say, here is the plan should X, Y, and Z happen. But to
Mhm.
have no plan that people are aware of, that people understand is a bigger issue.
I know you only have
Um,
3 minutes left, so I am going to open this up. A new law
yes.
is set to take effect in Philadelphia aimed at making rent more affordable in the city. The Move in Affordable Plan was introduced to City Council earlier this year and signed by Mayor Sherelle Parker back in September. Under the new law, landlords are required to offer installment payment options for security deposits that cost more than 1 month's rent. It is set to take effect tomorrow.
Right. And the next law that has to be passed, which I hope is being worked on, I know Rue is really instrumental in this, is the state law that would ban rental agencies from hiking rent above 20%. I
Yeah.
think 10 or 20%, something like that. That's crucial because currently in Pennsylvania, your rent next year could triple, and there's nothing legally that could be done to stop that. So one of the things that's going to stop the bleed is by capping rent hike at a certain percentage. That's one of the things that we should be lobbying for really heavily. I'm on my way to the United Nations, and so
Thank you, my
we
darling,
will.
as always,
Yes,
for joining
yes.
us. I'll see you next Monday unless I need it before then.
I'll be here.
Thank you, darling. See you later.
Right now.
Bye bye. Bye bye. Um, I don't know. Sometimes I just wonder if we stop and think about what people are dealing with before we make unilateral decisions. Let me read a little bit of news to you. The director of the Food and Drug Administration's Vaccine Division told agency staff in a memo that an internal review found that at least 10 children died after and because of receiving the COVID vaccine. The 3,000-word memo obtained by NBC News was written by Dr. Vinay Prasad, director of the FDA Center for Biologics Evaluation and Research. In it, Prasad claims that the agency staff determined that no fewer than 10 out of 96 children deaths reported to the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System, or VAERS, between 2021 and 24 were related to COVID vaccination. He said the true numbers could be higher, accusing the agency of ignoring safety concerns for years. The memo sent Friday did not include the children's ages or medical histories, timelines, or documentations for the deaths he references, and does not identify the manufacturer of the vaccine. The FDA's findings have not been published in a peer-reviewed journal. This was reported by NBCPhiladelphia.com news. Uh, so much, so much, so much. I could, if I go here about the COVID vaccines, it'll be another 2 hour show. President Trump said Friday he's canceling all orders signed by former President Joe Biden using an auto pen, a mechanical device that reproduces signatures. Any document signed by Biden via the use of an auto pen is hereby terminated and of no further force or effect, Mr. Trump wrote on Truth Social. I'm hereby canceling all Can he do this? I'm hereby canceling all executive orders and anything else that was not directly signed by crooked Joe Biden. I can't read this stuff. This is by CBSNews.com. Go ahead and read it. Trump cancels Biden orders, signed order pen. The Trump administration has halted all asylum decisions and paused issuing visas for people traveling on Afghan passports, seizing on the National Guard shooting in Washington to intensify efforts to rein in legal immigration. The suspect in Wednesday's shooting near the White House that killed Specialist Sarah Beckstrom, 20, and critically wounded Staff Sergeant Andrew Wolf, 24, both of the West Virginia National Guard, is facing charges including first-degree murder. Investigators are seeking to find a motive for the attack. A 29-year-old Afghan national who worked with the CIA during the Afghanistan war is the person who has been accused. He applied for asylum during the Biden administration, was granted it in this year under President Donald Trump, according to a group that assists with resettlement of Afghans who helped U.S. forces in their country. This was written by NBCPhiladelphia.com/news. The nation's longest running Thanksgiving Day parade brought thousands of people to Center City early Thursday as families from across the Delaware Valley lined the streets to celebrate a 106-year tradition filled with floats, balloons, matching bands, and holiday cheer. This was written by Fox29.com News. God Almighty. Sometimes you wonder. A man charged with voting twice in 2020 election has adopted a novel legal agreement that he's covered by the pardon that President Trump granted to allies who attempted to reverse his 2020 election loss. Federal prosecutors charged Matthew Lace in September with double voting in the November 2020 election. The U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Pennsylvania alleged that Lace moved from Pennsylvania to Florida in August of that year and voted both in person in Florida and via mail ballot in Bucks County. Both votes were allegedly for Trump. Jesus. Secretary of State. That was written by PhillyVoice.com. I also want to make sure I'm giving credit to the people who are actually writing these articles. Secretary of State Mark Rubio described Sunday's meeting with the Ukrainian delegation on ending Russia's war with Ukraine as productive, while acknowledging there's more work to be done. We continue to be realistic about how difficult this is, but optimistic, Rubio says. We just don't want to end the war. We also want to help Ukraine to be safe forever, so never again will they face another invasion. ABCnews.go.com wrote this. Travelers around the United States face delays as major airports during the busy holiday season as winter weather disrupted airline schedules and software issues temporarily grounded a popular plane model. This was CBSNews.com. Then there's the Wanamaker Light Show. 2 killed in New Mexico plane crash. That's USAtoday.com. Northwestern University has agreed to pay $75 million in a settlement with the Trump administration to restore hundreds of millions in federal funding that was withheld amid an investigation into alleged civil rights violations and anti-Semitism on campus. The settlement announced on November 28th will reinstate nearly $800 million in federal funding that was frozen in April. So they paid $75 million to get $800 million back. $800 million back. The funding freeze came after the Trump administration and Republican lawmakers scrutinized college campuses for their handling of pro-Palestinian protests last year. This was written by USAtoday.com. A man was killed on Friday evening. This is local news when a fire tore through a home in the Strawberry Mansion section of Philadelphia and spread to a neighboring house, officials said. The blaze broke out around 4:45 p.m. near 33rd Street and Ridge Avenue. Deputy Fire Chief Bill Dembski said crews arrived within 4 minutes to find heavy flames on the second and third floor, and a man was found inside dead. This is written by WHYY.org. The Bears won against the Philadelphia Eagles. All that is happening. Washington Mayor Muriel Bowser announced Tuesday that she will not be seeking re-election. She announced her decision in a video on social media, calling it an immense privilege to have worked alongside district residents. She has served 3 terms, none more tumultuous than the last year. And this was PhillyTrib.com. Listen, what a way to come back to the show. David says we need to cap tax increases and utility rates first. Whew. Joanne Kemp says history says there have always been some sort of order pen signature, even dating back to 1803. David says, don't blame landlords for your rents, blame city council and other state elected officials. They're the ones setting rates and taxes, thus passed down to renters. Ooh, child. Lord have mercy. Listen, y'all. I'm getting off the air tomorrow. We will have guests, and I believe throughout the week we should have guests, including our Thursday show, the Love Is segment. There's a lot to discuss there. This episode of Mornings with Marva is officially over. I am Andrea Lawful Sanders. I'll see you when I see you. Bye, everybody. Bye bye. Bye, my darlings. Bye, my darlings. Bye bye. What is happening? What the heck is happening here? Too funny. Bye, loves.